Sam joining us now on the War Horse Sportsbook Hotline. Sam, how are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Happy early holiday. Thank you, sir. Yeah, we won't get to talk to you before either of the upcoming holidays, so appreciate that as well. Sam, let's hop right into volleyball. I know a lot of us were expecting to feel quite differently this morning than the way things played out. As you look back on the season, on the match against Texas and how that played out, what's going to stick out to you the most about this specific Nebraska volleyball team?
Oh, great story. Just a super story all season long. A team that I feel like really embraced the expansiveness of their team and the sport and all those things. Just a great combination of youth and excitement and talent. And, so yeah, I mean, everybody, this is going to be a special year, irrespective of the conclusion. That would have been true if they'd lost in the Final Four instead of the final match. So all that's still on the table. Very memorable. Certainly not the end they wanted. But yeah, I mean, this is the year that college volleyball took a step as a sport. And Nebraska played a role in that, a huge role in that. And sometimes that's bigger than a championship. And that's not to downplay what happened yesterday. Obviously, they're disappointed, and they'll have to chew on that all off season. But this was a leap year for the sport, and Nebraska helped provide the leap.
Yeah, for sure. You had a lot of your team down there in Tampa, and I know we did too, but it seems like with no surprises, the overwhelming support of Husker Nation showed up. And just, did you hear any stories from your team or just really what it was like in first person to just see the support, especially when the team entered and just what that was like for this team?
I like that the NCAA has a blue carpet for the teams kind of coming in. I think that's a great idea. I would like to see it, used in basketball too. And so there's a lot of red around that blue carpet. So I think that's the coolest thing. And so that you had, you had an opportunity for the fans and the athletes to interact in that way. And I think that was probably really special.
Yeah.
And John Cook does actually not dole out compliments easily. And so if he says Tampa did a really good job, then they did a really good job. And I think he means that, and it's probably a template for how you do things going forward on some of the other sites. As especially when it isn't located in Wisconsin, Nebraska, Texas, one of those states. When you don't have it in those states, you have to do something a little extra.
Yeah.
And I feel like they did a great job.
Yeah.
We're talking with Sam Mckewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, you mentioned how you thought this was the year where volleyball took a step forward nationally. First, I guess just what gives you that indication, and how much you mentioned Nebraska playing a role in that. What role did Nebraska play in that?
The world record attendance match played a role in that. Everybody's kind of seen the photos from that now, and I think they realize what's possible, and how that looked and how that felt. The TV ratings. So the NCAA is taking multiple sports back out the contract, and they're exploring decoupling some of the packages. So like ESPN, ABC, ESPN mostly purchased the volleyball championship as part of a bundle.
Mm-hmm.
And the only things that were separate from the bundle, I think, are the CWS, college football is its own thing. CWS, basketball, men's basketball, women's basketball, CWS, I think, are the only ones that are sort of separate. And then there might be some smaller ones that I'm not aware of, skiing and crap like that shows up on NBC or whatever. I'm not saying it's crap, but you know
Right.
what I mean. But most of them are bundled into a contract with ESPN, ABC. And so ESPN has sandbagged the sport of volleyball for some time. I mean, they're putting, third-rate bowl games on. No offense to the FCS playoffs, but the FCS playoffs, which are not nearly as popular as volleyball matches, the NBA or whatever. So when the NCAA decoupled it, though, see that forces ESPN ABC to care more,
Mhm.
and Fox wants it too. And so Fox has an ability to vote, to vie for very specifically the volleyball thing. They don't necessarily have to vie for the whole thing. Like Fox doesn't have to put on, the track championships and all these other things, wrestling, whatever. Fox can zero in on volleyball. And so you're going to see the sport of volleyball get a huge boost on TV because the NCAA decided, we want to value this sport in a way that maybe is different than we have in the past. And you're going to see it really grow. Right now, volleyball is behind women's basketball and it's behind softball. And at least for the national title, it's behind gymnastics. Now, we'll see what happens when the ratings come out here in a couple of days. We'll find out how the ratings did. The sweep doesn't necessarily help.
Yeah.
But, so we'll see what happens. But I would say volleyball will jump ahead of women's gymnastics and then be right maybe behind softball. And then with the new contract, if it goes to Fox or wherever, it's going to grow even more. And with that will come challenges. It's welcome to the world of television. And they'll find that out real quick. I mean, Cook has had everything the way he wants it pretty much with his schedule for a long, long time. But now all of a sudden Fox is going to do a Wisconsin, Texas, Stanford, some other team, quadrangular or whatever you want to call that. And Nebraska's not a part of that yet.
Yep.
And so it's going to change. And it won't always be to Nebraska's liking what changes, but that's the nature of the sport. The bigger it gets, the more you got to compromise, and Nebraska will benefit in terms of visibility. The other thing I will say is the bigger the sport gets, the more parity exists. And so some of the advantages that Nebraska has will disappear. Not disappear, but they will get smaller. This happened in football too, and it will happen in volleyball, and people will have to get used to that. Nebraska, it's going to get harder to win every single match for Nebraska volleyball. That's a good thing for the sport, but it'll be an ongoing challenge for Nebraska. And I'm not saying that's specific to Nebraska. I'm saying that's the nature of sports when they get bigger.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I wanted to kind of get back to that a little bit on just how Robbie said, you said this was a big step for volleyball this year, and Nebraska was at the forefront of that. And it felt like this past weekend down at the Final Four, whether you were a Husker fan down there or a neutral fan, it felt like everyone was cheering for Nebraska. And it just felt like most of this nation, from what it seemed like from coverage and social media and just, people we were following, that they've fallen in love with this Nebraska team. And we talked about just it's this young team and their mentality that makes you want to be a competitor again. They put a fire in you as a observer. Just as you've covered this team, and your team's covered this team, just like, have you been around a team like this at such a young age that plays with such a fire and just a mentality such as this team?
Not exactly. No. I think it's unique in that way, and I think Cook has called it unique.
Yeah.
I think it's unique for him too, because I think they've had some teams that are better than this.
Yeah.
That have more talent. They had a team with Sarah Pavan and Jordan Larson. I think a lot of those teams though felt the pressure more and tightened. Were a little tighter.
Yeah.
Than this one is. Now that said, they faced an adverse moment in the NCAA title match, and they didn't respond the way that they responded the way you might expect, actually, from a team that hadn't lost much and was very young. But that's not how they hoped to have responded. So, for the first time all year, their youth showed a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it cost them. Lindsey Krause being hurt didn't help. We won't, she was unhealthy, so we won't know how it would have turned out if she had been. Probably a little different because I think Lindsey's, a good player and would have helped the team this year. So there's that. I think people they just have a unique combination of personalities on that team that really coalesce this year. You've got a couple that are, you've got Lainey Chilboy's really fiery. So is Harper Murray.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody watch the post-match press?
Yeah.
I was more struck by her than I was Becca because, I think Harper was really upset and angry
Yeah.
know, like
Yeah. Angry.
in a competitive way, not
Yep.
a devastated way, but in a like,
Mhm.
you know, pissed off.
Yeah.
And you know, so she's obviously, you know, the star of that. Bergen Riley's very polished for a freshman, very composed. And then you have all the other pieces. So yeah, I think people came to really enjoy that team, like all the components of it. Then you turn on the match, and ABC ESPN spent a lot of time on Texas, specifically, you know, Asia O'Neal, and rightly so. She was a
Yeah.
player on the court in a lot of ways. And, you know, she's got a famous dad, and so, you know, it's once you turn on the match, I think everybody's like, "Oh, Texas apparently is a better team here," and,
Yeah.
and they played like it.
Yeah.
But you know, Nebraska's going to have to. One thing I will say, and I've covered sports long enough to be able to be confident in saying, no one year is the same.
Mhm.
And so all of the things that were true about their chemistry in 2023 will have to be rebuilt in a slightly different way in 2024. It's part of why, and I wrote this a couple times. I said, this is the year. This is the year to win it. This is the team. This is the year. They got the thing together. You just can't guarantee what happens from here. Sometimes people get hurt. Some people leave. Some people get tired of each other. You can't guarantee chemistry year after year like they just had it. So it's a missed opportunity in that way. They've got to get better. I think they will. But I think at the same time, you know, they're going to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, we had this magical season where everybody got along. How do we bottle that up?
Yeah.
And how do we keep that going? And that's going to take some work on Cook's part because this, you know, the spell, so to speak, was broken on Sunday, and now they got to restart the spell, and that's not going to be easy when you don't have when everybody's not new to this. They're going to be going through it again, and it'll feel like more of a grind, and we'll see how they figure it out.